Here now to give us his perspective on the surprise ending to the Trump-Kim summit, Dan McClory. Dan is the managing director, head of equity capital, and head of China at Boustead Securities. Dan, better to have no deal than a bad deal. Do you think the president was right to not give in on sanctions relief and walk away?
Well, thanks, Michelle. He was absolutely correct to not give in. You and I walk away every time we go to buy a car or a house or all kinds of things, and for it to be interpreted as more than that, I mean, I think it's just good negotiating. He knows what he wants. He's not willing to prematurely concede. And I think it sends a very strong signal to further negotiations with North Korea and other countries like China that he's in the midst of right now.
Dan, let's focus on North Korea still for now. And many are making the comparison between this and Ronald Reagan's Reykjavik summit with Gorbachev. The talks collapsed at the last minute there, but the progress that had been achieved there was eventually resulted in the 1987 INF Treaty. Do you think that, of course, between the U.S. and the Soviet Union, do you think there could be a similar situation here, that whilst it may look like a setback now, this could in fact yield several steps forward?
It very well may. I mean, I think each time these two leaders get together, they learn a little bit more about each other. And some of the dynamics are now starting to be played out a little deeper, a little longer. You know, I completely agree with that statement that it's better to do no deal at all than to do a bad deal. If you look at so many of the bad deals that we have had to work through from prior administrations, we don't have to go too far. And to have the discipline when, as the president said, there are agreements prepared, there's a signing ceremony, there's a special lunch, and just to be able to say, you know what, this is just, it's not happening today, and we need to take a break. I mean, that's a leader, and that takes discipline.
You know, Dan, Trump critics say that the president lost out to Kim because Kim got his moment of glory on the world stage. And that Trump is yet to get a deal, and that Kim has been seen as a credible world leader. Now, you do have the hostage releases, the return of remains of U.S. soldiers from the Korean War, and the pause in testing. And, of course, the rapport established. Do you think that was worth giving Kim this recognition for?
Yes. And the reason I say that, Michelle, is something very telling occurred today, and of course we don't know everything about North Korea and the state media apparatus there, but they made no mention whatsoever of the walkaway. Now that obviously says that they've interpreted that as not so much of an overwhelming positive for the Supreme Leader. So I think that says something. I think the other dynamic, and to go back to the Reykjavik analogy that you were making before, we have a really important new dynamic, and that is this financial warfare. And, the fact that sanctions are so crippling and they're so disturbing and disruptive, and they can just, forestall development of countries, we've got some really, really strong cards on our side of the table. Reagan may not have had that or didn't realize it, or the world financial system wasn't so interconnected as it is today. But that is something, as you can tell, because the Supreme Leader asked for it and insisted on it, that is something that they are really, really fighting for, and it's something that we can continue to deny them.
And Dan, the president also using a stick approach during his negotiations with China over trade with a tariff. So how does China view this? I mean, China is in tough trade negotiations. It's seeing that the president is willing to walk away from the table. What message is this sent to Beijing?
Concern. What I've heard is that has evoked concern on the part of China, certainly on the part of the Chinese people who are trying to read and interpret leadership, that, this isn't a guy who just engages in brinksmanship for the sake of a photo op and it's all just some little game. This is a guy who knows what he's doing. And if he's willing to walk away from that, which has far greater, human implications than a trade war does, imagine what he's prepared to dig his heels in about with China. And, some of the quarters in Washington that are saying Trump isn't being tough enough on China, I think they're getting a taste for exactly what he can unleash if he decides to do it in that context.
Dan, do you see China perhaps trying to use its influence over Pyongyang to its advantage in the trade talks, using this impasse with the North Koreans as a bargaining chip?
Well, they sure did initially. Remember before the Mar-a-Lago summit and how that really came into play. And, I think the president actually acknowledged Mr. Xi and said, we really appreciate him doing that. We're standing together on this one. So I would absolutely expect that to come back into play. China needs every advantage that they can garner, and that they certainly do have a very strong cause and effect on what's going on in North Korea. They're so up close to it, and they have such an ability to alter events there.
Okay, but Dan, here's where we stand right now, because the North Koreans are saying that their position is not going to change, that they've given as much as they were willing to give, and they don't want to resume talks. So what happens next?
Well, I would refer to my friend Juan Zarate, who was an undersecretary of Treasury, wrote a book called Treasury's War. And we're going to engage in this financial warfare. And, these massive and biting financial constraints that they're under are eventually going to take their toll. And they will come around. As you've pointed out, and I think everyone agrees, the Supreme Leader has garnered a lot of upside from this already, just being on a platform and in a stage with President Trump. I'm sure he wants to get back to that, and he doesn't want to be seen as someone who's been refused. So he has something to live up to now. But I absolutely think that there'll be an entrenched, dug-in position here. And I don't think Trump is going to move at all. And there's going to have to be some compromise, I believe, from the other side.
Dan, very quickly, do you see Kim Jong-un resuming missile testing?
No, that would be tantamount to, a complete suspension, for the indefinite future of any form of talks. So, and that would bring back all of President Trump's colorful monikers and everything else. So, would be too drastic of a move for them to play.
Yeah, that will unleash those fire and fury tweets most likely. Dan, thank you so much. Dan McClory.
Right.